over to you.
Hello, everyone. It's good to see so many people back here. I didn't think we'd have anybody on this day, at least in the US. It's a beautiful, beautiful day, beautiful fall day. So I'm really glad that you're here and that we can have this conversation. This is a subject that's near and dear to both Christian and my heart. Because we are two women who wrote a book on this topic that we are calling Recovery from the Inside Out. Both of us have extensive background in the field of addictions, me professionally and Christian personally. And so we wrote this book. Actually, we started it a year ago today. We met up at my home in the Azores and started brainstorming and put it together, and we got it ready for the conference that you all probably have heard about that was last weekend, which was pretty awesome. And now we are doing this webinar to try to expand on some of the ideas in the book. This is the book, just for those of you who haven't seen it, in case that's the case. So it's called Addiction, One Cause, One Solution, Recovery from the Inside Out. And the book and this program are for people, no matter where you are in your recovery, or if you're a professional working with people in recovery, that if you're newly sober, if you're struggling with your sobriety, you know, we know from our experience that this understanding is extremely helpful and helps to create much more peace of mind and well-being, sense of well-being. So today we're going to be following up on our last session, which was now a month ago, on spirituality and this understanding, the inside out understanding. And we're going to sort of expand on that a little further. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Christian, who's going to share.
Thanks, Barbara. Thank you. We called our chapter in the book that sort of launch. I mean, I suppose in a sense, the whole of the three principles are about spirituality. But we put a specific chapter in the book called Spirituality Revealed, and that was quite an important milestone for me. The coming to see that one of the outcomes from having some sort of awareness, some kind of knowledge or understanding of the principles revealed a spiritual aspect of me, of life, of everybody that had eluded me in the in the 20 years at that point that I had been sober. And to kind of cut back to that really briefly, Barbara and I were just sort of touching on this earlier today when we had a chat, that you know, the fundamental sort of definition of addiction, if you like, it certainly in my mind, is that the inability to stop something, stop a harmful behavior through one's own resources, right, through one's own psychology, one's own effort, one's own willpower. And that was certainly true of me. I didn't even want to stop drinking. I wanted to try and control it, but I could neither stop it nor control it of my own resources. And I knew something of the world of recovery, and I also knew that there was a strong suggestion that finding a spiritual life, finding a spiritual path, was key to recovery. And I was really, really willing to do that. I had come from being at least agnostic and probably atheist, but I was really so beaten by how my life was unfolding that I was very open to spirituality, and I was very open to the 12 steps, and you know, and put a lot of kind of time and attention there. But it was only after I discovered the three principles, I would say, that I really found a reliable, consistent sense of the spiritual that I felt I could kind of relax into, that I felt there was something, that I wasn't faking it to make it. It wasn't adopting somebody else's higher power. It wasn't putting away things that I thought were true and believed in order to try and, adopt a new belief. And all of those had been part of the journey of attempting to find spirituality, or to find something that worked for me. And it's just so it's so wonderful. I think especially after all those years of searching in vain, it's so wonderful to have a sense of the underneath what goes on with me and what goes on with anybody in the day-to-day, and the underneath the thinking that creates the feelings and perhaps the turmoil and all the ups and downs. Underneath that, there is a constant place of peace and wholeness, and a wellspring from which all sorts of creativity and resourcefulness and resilience can spring. And it doesn't need to be worked at, and it doesn't need to be polished, or it's already there in me and in you and in any new baby that's going to be born. It's just part, our birthright as human beings. And the beauty of the principles is that the fact that what we're feeling is not our circumstances, the fact that what we're feeling is our thinking, including our thinking about those circumstances, and the possibility of seeing that creative process, is that alone is what enables those creations, those daydreams, almost those ideas that we have, those beliefs that we've involuntarily created. That's what enables, just seeing them enables them to dissolve, and gives us the opportunity to see and feel and experience the spiritual energy, the creative energy that's underneath. And one of our teachers, one of our mentors, Keith Blevins, often says, the only time we can see that is in this moment. The only we can't have an insight into how I cannot have an insight into how I am creating my experience in the past or in the future. It's just right now. So suppose Barbara were to stand or start making funny faces and put me off, I might have the feeling of being annoyed with her. And my initial response, despite what I know, would be, what are you playing at? It might be that. But I would have the opportunity to say, oh, there I go. And perhaps Barbara would be giving me funny faces to say, your time's up, or something like that. I might see have a different, or perhaps she was stung by a bee or anything. But the opportunity to see, I mean, that, obviously that's a silly example. The opportunity to see that wholeness underneath, and it's very magical. It's because it's not subordinate to the ego. If the ego is what we know, or what we think we know, or what we believe, this wellspring underneath is so much vaster. And when the ego dissolves, in the moment of insight, the ego dissolves on a subject, and we get a glimpse of what's available. And it's not just what's there now, but it's that the potential for fresh insight, fresh thinking, for the need or desire to drink or use another drug to be taken away. It's no longer on us. The burden, there's an opportunity to cast some of the burden on that essence within. So those were some of my thoughts about spirituality revealed, Barbara. And perhaps I could hand it back to you there, and I won't make any funny faces.
Well, if I was making funny faces, I wasn't aware of it.
No, that was a joke. You weren't really.
Okay.
That was
just checking, because I was like, wait a minute, am I making funny faces? Okay, well, I'm glad you cleared that up. Okay, so, oh gosh, I have so much so much on my mind, I guess, because I've been these last few weeks, this whole issue of transformation, the possibility of transformation, of seeing beyond our personal thinking and beyond our everyday consciousness to so much greater truth about who we are and how we experience the world and how we what's possible as we step into our true essence beyond the personal story, beyond the ego, beyond the day-to-day automatic reactions that we have. So, you know, I posted this week before this, the quote out of the book that talked about seeing the spiritual, the psychological as a portal to the spiritual. And, you know, in the three principles world, there's sort of this snobbery that happens. Like, if you're not really spiritual, then, you know, that it's all about spirituality. But you really, one of the things, and I was just talking with another colleague this morning about that, until we start to understand and see, as Christian said, our thinking creating our experience, our feelings from moment to moment, until we can really insightfully get that that is all an illusion that's being created by this incredibly awesome creative power of universal thought. Until we can see that, we tend to think that's all there is. It's like this narrow little vision that looks like the day-to-day, everyday experience that we're having is all there is. And we get really caught in that. We get caught up in the ups and the downs and the sideways and the, you know, we're like blown with the wind, literally everything that comes along. But when we can see beyond that, when we actually are given through this understanding the right roadmap to be able to see, oh, that's what's happening here. I'm living in the feeling of my thinking moment to moment. And once we can really begin to wake up to that truth, at that point, it does open a door to the spiritual world that lays beyond that, like Christian was referring to, that deep inner wellspring that we can begin to, you know, rely on. And one of the issues that we wrestled with when we were writing the book was, well, you know, people in early recovery really have difficulty discerning wisdom from some really bad ideas, and can, you know, keep convincing themselves that, you know, they can drink in a controlled manner, or they're safe to hang around in a bar when, you know, they're trying to stop, or, you know, whatever stories that we make up. But once the mind starts to clear and the toxicity starts to clear out of the brain, and we are connected with other people who are sort of looking in this direction, I think we become much more sort of calmly accepting, and are able to really much more clearly hear that there is an inner source of wisdom that has always given us pretty clear feedback when we're on the wrong track. When we are, you know, our lives are a mess. Generally, when people come into my office and they know their lives are a mess, the state of their mind is not in a good place, they have the wisdom, you know, that they need to find a way out of that. They're stuck there and they don't know a way out. But as they start to see more and more about what's going on and where their story or where their personality or where their uh, the conditioned thinking that they got from their family of origin, or the messages they created in their own mind as a result of having had certain experiences in life, once they can start to see, oh, those were all just sort of pointers along the way that help us to see a deeper truth about what's really going on, and what opens up to our vision when we can, when the personal thinking, when our small mind, as the Buddhists call it, the little mind, or the small mind, sort of gets anesthetized, or like we just sort of put it to the side, like that it's just chatter, and we and really listen for a deeper wisdom and a deeper truth, and that does become revealed. It's not something you have to necessarily search for, but I think it is something that you listen for. And the more you have awareness of it, the more you see, the more and more you see. And the more we look in this direction, the more and more we see. So the good news that I see, from a psychological point of view, is that now we're pointing people in the to true north, rather than sending them on this circuitous journey to where they may ultimately end up with true north. But we can shortcut that by just pointing them towards true north, which is that this exists. And the more you can see that, and the more you can experience your personal mind creating these stories that shield it from your vision, the more and more we can, like Christian said, come to depend on it. So I'm going to take a breath here. I don't know, Christian, if you wanted to add anything there.
It was just the thing that you said about, something occurred to me when you were talking, and we've spoken before about the confusion that can exist in your mind in early recovery, and I mean, there's stuff in the recovery literature about that, people, but it is interesting, and I do think that in the early days of recovery, or or if you're not even reached recovery yet, that there's value in having a trusted friend or sponsor, or somebody that you can speak with. But I was just remembering some things that of my own experience, and I think even then there is some ability to discern. And I'm not suggesting that you kind of throw caution to the wind, but for example, I kind of knew from very early in my recovery that I was okay being in a a place where they sold alcohol, which is, I mean, like pubs and restaurants and all of that, very much where the social life is here. I knew for me that I was okay there, but I also knew that I would no longer be okay to sort of serve drink. And it's something that I'd had when I was younger. I'd had jobs as a barmaid, and even in a party set, a private party setting, that I knew that was a dangerous thing for me. And it's funny because it's just, I think early on, and I went on to sort of doubt myself, and I let other people tell me that you're foolish for ever going into licensed premises. And I'm not saying that would be true for everybody, or it's the right thing or anything, but there was just that ability to discern, and it was easier, not, in some ways, not to go. There was nothing lost because of that. But I think what I did throw away myself was a trust in that inner voice for some time in my recovery. And there was a point where I thought that's been a mistake. I have to start trusting myself. And it meant not trusting every emotional thought that came my way, every kind of ego-driven thought that way. But it was, I kind of instinctively knew that I had to start trusting my inner voice, and that being that it was not a good thing when I couldn't. And I think that and as you say, that I think there is an art to that, an art to sort of see what's drivel and what's pure gold. But Yeah, I think it's one of the things, if I was advising my younger self, it would be, don't get detached from your inner voice. Don't stop trusting yourself. By all means, run things by people. By all means, have, sounding boards, but don't do that.
Yeah. Well, I think that again, as the noise from our minds and the misunderstanding starts to settle down and calm down, again, the clarity emerges. So I spent part of this weekend with someone who is really struggling with her sobriety, and she really. I think one of the things that we do, especially in early recovery, you make a misstep and there's all this judgment around that, and this whole story that, oh, I am bad, I'm stupid, I'm a mess up, I'll never get this, whatever our story is, and we create that, and then we live in it as though it's a truth, and you can't see beyond that, because you've just created that what looks like, in your own personal mind, this invisible thought story that looks like truth to you. And it seems to me, when we can begin to see, oh no, that doesn't, just because you think that doesn't make it true, just because you think that doesn't hold the key to the kingdom. It really is just a story that you're making up. It's an illusionary story that you're making up, and you're not really seeing beyond that to who, to this person that emerges when you're not under the influence, when you're happily involved in whatever creative endeavor you're doing, what all of the incredible capacity that you had to raise healthy children and be a wonderful mother and grandmother, and all of those things get lost and in or hidden from your vision. I shouldn't say lost, because they're never lost, but it's like this automatic reaction that is created by thought. And once you can see, oh, that's created by thought, then you can open up to the essence of who you truly are underneath that. It's like this glowing being that lives just beneath the surface of that psychological story, habituated psychological story, that really has nothing to do with truth with a capital T, or universal wisdom. It has to do with a very small ego-driven, path that you've walked on for the course of your life, for however long.
Yeah, yeah. But no matter how small that path is, it can be, those false beliefs and limitations that we have about ourselves can be so compelling, and people can live in them for decades, feeling some version of worthless because, or not as good as because, less than because. And the lovely thing about the three principles is it gives you the opportunity to genuinely drop that. And it isn't in our time, it isn't automatic on the first conversation you have or something like that, or maybe, but maybe like a Sid Banks moment, but that the possibility to say, oh, that too's a thought, that thing, that belief I've had about myself, that judgment I've had on myself for decades, it's actually nonsense. It's just another thought. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
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 Barbara, I'm noticing we've got quite a small call tonight, and so it'd be lovely to give everybody a chance to come in. I'm wondering if this would be a good place to leave it, unless there's anything else you want.
I think so. No, this would be great. Ready.
Yeah.